Yo, 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 what's up, y'all? It's your boy Big Mike in the building. I got my boy Boogie Bob, my co-host, my co-heart. What's up, Boogie? How you living, man?
I'm doing good, living well. Went to Texas Roadhouse last night, got to share dinner with my mom. She's been
Nice.
here all week, so a good steak at the Texas Roadhouse always a good evening. So
And them rolls.
Them
yeah,
rolls, yeah. Yeah, them butter rolls,
that cinnamon butter is yeah.
man. And if y'all haven't seen the last a couple episodes back, Boogie Bob Mom was a special guest, man, for a couple of segments. So we appreciate her. We shout out her. And man, it was a good little conversation we had. She had some thoughts on Luka's trade. So we
Right.
had she chimed in. And
Is she a junkie, Boogie Bob? Your mom? A basketball
She's a
junkie?
sports fan in general. That's
Okay.
where my love of sports came from. My
Wow.
dad didn't have much athletic ability. He liked sports, but my mom's enthusiasm is where my love of sports came from.
Wow. That's
facts.
cool. I want to be on when she's on. Can we do that? Can we set that
We can
up?
arrange that.
Right.
Yeah.
I tr- she had on a shirt. She was in a theater, and the name of the group for the theater was Salty Seniors, and so Coach Mike thought that would be a good name for her on YouTube.
That'd be
Facts.
a good name. Great name.
And guys, if y'all hear him talking now, and he's been on before, and we love having him on. We can. Coach Mason, how you been, man? How things going on your side of the world?
Man, I'm good. This was actually a loaded week, but now I'm heading into spring break, going to Hawaii next week. That's gonna be pretty cool.
Congrats.
But yeah, man, just a loaded week. Man, the season's over, but I seem to have gotten a bit busier even after that.
Now, how the
Which is
kids do
okay.
this? They do pretty much. How they end the season pretty much on a high note, or they just kind of got through it and then getting ready for next season.
Yeah, no, I mean we finished the season 13 and 16.
Nice.
So I will take it, man. It's way better than 2 and 27. Uh,
No, thanks.
so
13
no,
and
very, very,
16.
very proud of the boys. Yeah, and we're just really, to make no excuses, just giving credit to the other teams. We're in a gauntlet of a district.
Mm-hmm.
We've got Kimball who's still playing.
Yeah.
We've got Carter who they just
They
eliminated,
beat.
and
Yeah, they
and
got beat by Kimball, didn't
correct. And Roosevelt was really good this year.
they?
Lincoln and Pinkston are no joke.
Yeah.
And then still, man, you have to play those games when you play Hutch. This season was the first season in years where we were able to get over the hump in beating Hutch. And we've lost to those people probably 4 or 5 times by 1 or 2 over the last 6 years. And so
Congratulations.
that felt good finally beating them. It was like, bro, this was a monkey we're trying to get off our back for sure.
Is
And
that
so
Wilmer Hutchinson?
Yep.
Wilmer Hutchins. And
Yep.
they're no slouch either. And they have a really good coach over there, and Coach Billups. And also, too, man, Conrad has been, struggling a little bit, but some of these coaches are exceptional, and you just would never know it. So, Coach Wright is another one of those at Conrad that really can
Mm-hmm.
coach basketball, man. And so, it was a load every Tuesday and Friday night, and I thought that my boys were ready to play every night. It's just some nights just didn't go our way, ball didn't bounce our way, and it happens.
Man,
Well,
I
13 wins is quite an accomplishment.
no facts. And
Absolutely.
only thing I hated though, when I was there with my kids, man, I wish my son would have played basketball more. Only not just his freshman season, because that squad would have been a beast. Because you had
Sure.
Deontay, you had Chandler, you had Simke, you had Cedric, and you had Nate. You had a squad. That was man, them freshmen was killing it.
We could do a whole nother pod on just like the kids that have come through North Dallas. And yeah, we talk about Chandler a lot because he was one of those kids that was a 4 year kid for us. And um, yeah, you could see the improvement from day one to the time he finished. He helped us win games whenever we were in a struggle. He helped us win from 2 to 7 games, and that was huge. So yeah, if Sinke would have been able to play all those years and kind of refrain from being injured, yeah, it
Yeah,
would have gave us somebody we could throw the ball to, and just a safe place because he could play inside and out. So
yeah, he was
yeah,
a
man,
beast.
He can
I,
play,
I
man.
I hated that he just chose football, but hey, it is what it is.
He
But
was
and
good in
speaking,
that too, though. He was really
yeah,
good in that too.
yeah, he was. Matter of fact, he got a scholarship out of that too. But speaking of injuries, man, the most notable injury that happened maybe what last week was it? Yeah, it was last week. Kyrie Irving got injured, man, and he's out for the season with an ACL tear. Coach, I know you had an opportunity to kind of see the news on Kyrie. What's next for him? Will he continue to try to play? Will he be back in Dallas, or you think it's time for him to go ahead and just retire? I mean, what are your thoughts on what's going on with Kyrie?
Yeah, first and foremost, super unfortunate, and shout out to Kyrie Irving, man. He was having
Salute.
a
Yeah,
whale of a season, and man, just super unfortunate. This whole Mavs debacle essentially is super unfortunate. I actually went to that Bucks Mavericks game last Saturday, and so I got to see Kyrie play in his last full game. We didn't know that's what it was going to be, and he played extremely well. Um,
damn.
I'm I'm a little more optimistic than what I've been hearing from either friends or even some media that are questioning whether or not he'll come back and be the same player. And I had a friend of mine tell me, man, you got to think about Kobe down the stretch of his career and how it was a little injury riddled and how he was frustrated and they just really weren't winning games. And I said, but there's a major difference in those two guys at this point of their career. Kyrie had changed his whole persona, and he may have always been this way. But just the
Mm.
media fills us with whatever they want to.
Yeah.
But the teammate that he had become to these people, and
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if you guys have played on teams where you've been the best player or played with someone who just is a really good teammate is the best player. There's nothing more powerful than the guy that is the best player encouraging you whether things are going well or not. And that's one thing I started to see from Kyrie Irving. He was the lithium ion to the battery in these guys' backs.
Yep.
I watched him when guys missed shots, he was clapping, telling them like, "Hey, that's a good shot." When mistakes were made, he was right there encouraging. He never was pointing fingers. He never was demonstrative. And I watched him too in his own struggles at times. If he missed layups, he may clap his hand, but then it became contagious. The whole team was kind of lifting everybody up.
Mm-hmm.
So that makes me real optimistic for him and what he's about in his future coming back. They, I think he'll come back and at least get to the level in which he was playing today. Do I think he can exceed that level? Not necessarily, but I do at least believe he can get to within 5% of what he was today. And I think with what he had become as a teammate, and you add, that physical side to it, I mean, he's a savant, baby. I think he's going to be back. Uh, I don't know how long in terms of like next year, and it isn't something that you want to rush. And I hate that because yeah, Dallas is kind of in this window, but
Mm-hmm.
I think he'll be a Mav. I don't think he's close to retiring. And yeah, I don't think that we've seen the last of Kyrie Irving at elite play.
So looking at the injury, it's kind of similar to what happened to Klay Thompson. And when you look at Klay Thompson, he's kind of not the same as he was when he was with Golden State in his earlier years before the injury. And after the injury, he was still kind of showing flashes, but he's not the same Klay Thompson. Do you think that will be the same perspective when it comes to Kyrie Irving?
Yeah, I think really the drop that we see with Clay, or that I see, and I don't even want to call it a drop. Again, shout out to Clay Thompson. These guys, even on their worst day, are better basketball players than me. And so,
Same here.
but but I will say that maybe I don't know if y'all saw this, but Kyrie's defensive efficiency was elite. His on ball pressure was elite.
Yeah,
I don't know that we'll get that same level of consistency on that side. And essentially that's kind of the drop that we see with Clay. Um, we also kind of don't see Clay take you to the post as much as he used to back
yeah,
then. And maybe slightly more immobile when it comes to like moving or playing without the ball, but he's in a different role now. And so speed may be an issue, but Clay was never a fast guy to begin with.
yeah.
Um, And I don't know. I just think that Kyrie's body is different. We forget about the kid only played 9 college games. He Kyrie's been injured in some big moments, man. He missed that whole Cavs run
Hmm.
when he was in Cleveland, and he's always been able to bounce back. So I see no different here. Um, yeah, there's going to be some drop off. I mean, naturally, but that's why I was saying I think he could get to within 5% of what he was playing, the level he was playing at right now. And I mean, that's a win.
So let me ask you this question, and it's my last one for you. If he comes back, AD's healthy, Lively's healthy, Gafford's healthy, Clay's still there, because I don't know if Clay is feeling it anymore because of what's happened as far as the trade with Luka. Do you think Kyrie will make a difference with all three of those guys being his cohorts?
Yeah, I mean, we're going to talk about it later in the show about who's coming out of the West. And I think that ironically, prior to these injuries, even though the Mavs were, I think they might have been 5-6 at this time, fighting
Mm,
4, 5, 6 at this time. I would have had the Mavs coming out of the final, coming
mm,
out of the West. So I don't see anything different on the flip side. There's other guys too that are gonna improve, like Max Christie is going to improve.
mm,
We still haven't seen Caleb Martin at all in the lineup.
mm,
Najee Marshall's been he's been a joy and an
mm,
amazing signing for the Mavericks. We're missing that guy. Spencer Dinwiddie is revitalized his game. Then you got those three bigs. I mean, there's no other team in the NBA that has that. And y'all got to think about it. Lively already was coming back this year with like added elements to his game.
mm,
Being out an additional year, uh, Lively may come back one of the best big 3-point shooters that we have spacing the floor, playing alongside AD and then bringing Gafford in the mix. I just really like their team. I hate it for the Mavs fans that didn't get to see this, and I just hate what Mavs fans are having to go through right now. It's awful because I do think that there was a way still for them to be a title contender, and so I, I I think it bodes well for them if everybody can come back and be healthy. I just don't know if it'll be next season, so we're just gonna have to. It's a waiting game at this point.
jeez, yeah. Oh,
The other thing that we have to
yeah.
keep in mind is too clearly the Mavericks aren't hesitant to pull the trigger on trades. And I don't know how possible it is, but there's a chance that Kevin Durant could end up being over here in Dallas.
That's
And
been
that
the
would,
sentiment. Yeah.
that would be really neat. So no, I think based on the way that the Western Conference is year in and year out, it's one or two teams that are getting in and falling out. But I think the Mavericks are going to be on that team that's going to be one of those teams that's hungry and looking back to be on the uprise. And their mindset is win. That is the most important thing. It's not like you have a team here that's Boogie Bob was talking about it earlier that maybe they may be tanking now based on the circumstances, but like this isn't a tank thought process team. This is a we want to win a championship organization. And it's unfortunate. I've never seen anything like it before.
Never, 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 man. It's amazing. Boogie Bob, your thoughts on the injury that Kyrie suffered a couple of games back? Is he still destined to be a Maverick, or is he destined to possibly retire in the next 1 or 2 years?
Well, the first thing I want to say is prayers for Kyrie. Come back. Your health and your well-being, mentally, spiritually, physically, is more important than being a basketball player. So
Facts.
prayers for your healing. Uh, if you go back just a couple decades, uh, and it's one of the reasons that Cuban didn't sign Nash. Well, there's multiple reasons on the Nash front, but point guards at around 30, age 32, 33, they would fall off a cliff. And with new biometrics and better surgeries and more health, and we all hate the load management, but point guards didn't play till their late 30s or 40s. Kobe, if you consider him a shooting guard or point guard, he was one of the few that played that late. I'm not sure how old Jordan was, but most point guards didn't play past about 34, 33, 34 years of age. They're taking all the punishment from the bigs when they go in the paint, and that dish the ball, like it's hard on their bodies. So it hasn't been that long ago that a point guard, when they're reaching Kyrie's age, were showing noticeable decline anyhow. So uh for me, saying all that, it's too young for Kyrie to retire.
Hmm.
He's he's too big a competitor to retire in my mind. He this injury uh back in the 80s, when you got an ACL tear, you were out 2 years. And now it's a year. For some players, it's 6 months. But I haven't had an ACL on my left knee for 40 years. It's been torn, and you build up the muscles around it. It's like uh, it will pop in and out of place when you get tired. It doesn't necessarily stop your lateral movement, but your forward acceleration and stop. You can still accelerate, but when there's no ACL and you go to stop, there's nothing to hold the knee together except
Dang.
the small. And so it's not so much that it slows the player down. It's that when they got to decelerate or they got to come to a sudden stop jump, where Kyrie likes that dribble, gather, sidestep, shoot the three. Uh, that's you got to be able to trust the knee. And so that's what a no ACL. There's hockey players that play without an ACL, and doctors keep telling me, like, don't, if it don't bother you, don't wear a sleeve, but not at the level they're playing. Uh, I will say this: this is the third injury to Kyrie on the same knee.
Mm.
It's different injury. So in 2015, when Cleveland was playing Golden State in the finals, you may remember Kyrie had a knee injury. Is the
Hmm.
left knee.
Correct.
Uh, 2018, he had some problems and they had to take out some screws because it was causing an infection, and so he missed some time. I think he was in Boston
Yeah,
at the time.
Austin. Yeah.
So three different injuries to the same leg, and I told my mom when I saw him land and I saw the way his knee buckled,
Hmm.
I immediately I said ACL. I texted a friend of mine. I said, Kyrie's out for the season. I think I even texted you, Mike, that he's out for the season. And this before any media or anything. They said, "Oh, it's a sprained knee." I said, the way that knee buckled and the way it shifted, I was like, that's an ACL tear right there. Like
Yeah.
I mean, in football they won't even show gruesome injuries, but just the way he was leaning and all that weight, and his foot's off to the side, and that knee just you could just, you know. I'm like, yeah, that's not a sprain. That's a tear. Uh,
Yeah.
I think the most important. So if it takes a year, that means the earliest he could play would be March
Of next year.
of next year.
So
So
if that be the case, do you think Max Christie can fill the gap, or will they still have Dinwiddie?
no,
Because Dinwiddie's on a
no,
1 year contract.
no. They don't have anybody on. They don't have anybody on the current roster that can fill that gap. And the
What
only
about that
person that
guard they got from the G League? He's been playing pretty good. I can't remember his name.
Gortman,
Not Gortman.
Gortman,
It was Williams. His
His
name was
last name
Williams.
Brandon Williams.
Williams.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Williams.
Well, that he looks good in flashes when he's playing third team, but that's when Luka's gonna go too small, too small. Uh, I mean, he's got the motor and he's got the skills, but no, he's second or third string. He's like Daryl Armstrong was in later in his career type of player.
I think
Uh,
he can. I think he can push himself, kind of like the kid in New Jersey, Thomas. His name is what's his
Cam
name?
Thomas. Cam
Cam.
Thomas.
Yeah, that
yeah.
dude. They about the same height. They pretty much play almost the same. But only difference is Cam has more years in the league.
Well, they ironically of the two trade, they had the player that could fill in for either Luka or
Grimes.
Kyrie, and they traded him.
Yeah.
And I mean, I don't know if I said this last week, but when they traded Grimes, I'm like, they traded for an older player on a contract for 3 years because Grimes was going to become an unrestricted free agent this summer. And he had outplayed his contract, so he was going to get big money.
Mm-hmm.
Well, they knew that when they traded for him last summer when they ditched Hardaway's contract. They took on an additional $4 million this year in that Caleb Martin for Grimes trade, which kept them from being able to sign Moses Brown. So, you know, the Luka trade is dominating the news, but in my mind, the Grimes trade was equally as bad. Uh, Caleb Martin had one great season in Miami. He's been injury prone since then. Uh, Here's the real impact. Whether if he heals up in 6 months, then he might be ready, you know, somewhere in November, not maybe preseason, but somewhere around November, December. But here's the real impact. He has an option to opt out this year.
Yep.
And this is probably his last chance to get a max contract. And he's already at 40 million. So the smart play, if you flip the switch, he would have been eligible for a 3-year, 180 million or 3-year, $200 million contract. He was going to be the hottest free agent on the market.
Yeah.
So it was going to be really tough if he opted out for the Mavs to keep him. Uh, Forget the Lakers; they may go after him, but I mean, every team was loading up for Luka's got all kinds of cash and draft picks and salary cap room. Uh, and who wouldn't want? By the way, Coach Mason mentioned this earlier. The season that Kyrie was having, he was on a 40, 50, 90 pace. He was 40% from the field, 90% for the free throw. That's his fifth time in his career
Mm.
that he's done that. There's very few point guards that hit, uh, 40% from free 3-point range and 50% from the field and 90% from the free throw line. Uh, him basically people lifting him up just to stand him on the floor with no weight on the left foot to make
Mm.
those free throws said a lot about him and his character.
Yeah.
Uh,
Everybody was comparing it to Kobe when he tore his Achilles.
yeah, the Mamba mentality.
Yep.
But you could see how much pain he was in because tears were just going down his face, and some of that's the realization what's happening for the season. And the other is my ACL and still my knee will pop in and out of joint. It hurts.
Yeah.
It
Yeah,
swell
it
up,
does.
and then you get over it. But I'm not out there playing against world class athletes. Uh,
That's right.
but I think that's the forget uh, this as far as this season or next season. I think the real thing that's not talked about is does this change whether he opts out or opts in? Because if he doesn't choose to opt out, then comes back next year and plays like Coach Mason said, even within 95% of where he's at, then the following year, the Mavs had no bird rights. Uh, and so he'll if he comes back and doesn't opt out, he's playing for another max contract. So being 33, this really his last chance to get a max contract.
Yeah. Do you think
Yeah.
he's really in tune with trying to make a lot of money, or you just think he has more of a love for the game and he will probably just play with a good contract and not just the max?
I don't think he plays for the money. Chris Arnold on the uh, 103.3 mentioned this when they traded for Kyrie just about 2 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
He said Kyrie and money, and he knew Kyrie personally. He said, "I'm good." Kyrie's like, if I never play, I've won a championship. I've done a lot of things. I made an all-star. He's made a lot of money. He's invested well. He's like, I'm good. He doesn't play for the money he loves competition. he plays for the joy of it. And if anything's going to keep him in Dallas, is that this is probably the happiest you've seen Kyrie since he played at Duke.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
I agree
Yeah.
with that.
This trade is, I mean, it can go so many directions in what we can talk about. And the injury to Jaden Harden really hurt as well. I thought that kid can play to me.
Yeah,
Um, he's not as his IQ isn't there at times. He's a little he plays like
erratic.
he's young,
Yeah,
erratic. He plays like he's young, but that kid can play. He can put the ball in the hole. He was a top ranked high school player coming out of high school and clearly, went pro right out of high school with the G League Ignite. And I thought that even last season he was pressing for minutes in a sense. And so him going down and then you trade Quentin Grimes, I thought, those two guys would be a load to deal with, especially in the regular season, right? Like those two guys in your backcourt and you got Clay around and but very interesting. Like I said, and Boogie Bob makes a great point with Kyrie's contract. I actually think because of the Nike affiliation and just the relationship that he has with Nico Harrison
yeah,
and Anthony Davis, that
yeah.
he's 9 times out of 10 he's going to opt out, and the Mavericks are still going to pay him. We kind of saw this a little bit with Kevin Durant in Brooklyn, although be it he was younger, but Brooklyn still gave KD a max deal off that Achilles injury, and they just trusted that he would get back to being at least close to the same player that he was before. So
And
I
he
don't
set
know.
out a year. He set
And
out the first full year with Brooklyn.
correct.
Yeah.
So
But, but
I could see that.
the one thing with James Hardy, I love a good Hardy party that he can score and he is quick.
Sure.
But the I got a chance to see him play when he was in the G League with the Legends after he had played with G League at night. And I told Wild Dog, he was at the game with me. I said, I'm like, why are they playing him at shooting guard? He's not going to be a shooting guard in the NBA. And they had the Sean Wright the fourth playing point guard.
Mm,
And for G League, he probably was a better point guard. But to me, the G League coach was not developing Hardy, and the Mavs organization should have recognized that and made him play point guard in the
Sure.
G League. Even though Nashawn Wright was probably the better point guard, is you if they'd have forced him to play point guard at the G League, he might have gained some of that experience where he recognized up here he's got the physical tools, but this hasn't developed. Uh,
yeah,
Correct. And in all fairness to him too, these are all the role changes everywhere you go. And so if you already had him slotted to play behind Luka and Kyrie, was he going to be that primary ball handler for them, or was he scheduled to play alongside those guys? And if he was, then he would traditionally play the two. I don't know that the Mavs knew exactly where they wanted him to be. I think they
mm,
just saw a talent, and
yeah,
because
he's definitely a talent in the second round, but it's still a coach's responsibility to develop players.
I agree.
and
And
what?
he could shoot and he could score. And the fact that they didn't develop his point guard skills, why he was at the G League, was a lost year in my mind from that perspective.
And
Uh,
you
Yeah,
saw it firsthand too. So yeah, I agree with you.
so the other part of that too is uh, he's kind of a smaller version of Vinnie Johnson, you know. So yeah, his roles may have changed, and he comes in to be a scorer the first year as a Maverick off the bench when they had Dinwiddie and Brunson and Luca,
Sure.
and then he had Kyrie. So his roles changed, but you never quit developing a player. PJ Washington's a good example of that. He's playing power forward, uh,
and I was
out of
gonna say,
position,
speaking of
really.
all the injuries we had, who's all out now? You got Omax out, you got Jaden Hardy out, you got Anthony Davis out, Kyrie out, Dante Exum, PJ Washington, Caleb Morton should be coming back this next game, Gafford out, and Lively out. That's basically a whole squad right there. So you're really just putting together what you can put together. So it's one of those tough things to see what they
Duct
can do in
tape.
regards to
So much so that they've kind of overplayed Kessler Edwards,
yeah.
right? To the point to where they had to sit him the other night because I think being on a two-way contract, he's only allotted so many games. And so
45
they
games.
45 games, and I think he was 10 games away from that threshold. And so he said
And
the
it's
other night,
not necessarily played in 45 games. They just if they're active on an NBA roster for 45 games. So
correct.
there was 10 games where they were going to send him down to G League, but because of injuries, they had him on the active roster, which counted against the 45, even though he didn't play.
That's
Isn't that
crazy.
crazy?
Yeah.
I saw him at the Bucks game, saw him the game before, and shout out to him. He's been playing out of position, and he's been doing a magnificent job playing at the five. I mean, what an athlete! And
No.
but yeah, he didn't
Facts.
play in that Milwaukee game, and he was spry and healthy. But yeah, that game limit is a thing, and so yeah, the Mavericks are, man, what a season! My
So,
goodness,
Coach,
So they
with
played the last 3 games without their starting five.
yeah,
incredible.
Think about that. That 3 games without your starting five, and with 3 of your rotational players on the second string weren't
Right.
available.
nah, facts. So, Coach, with the Mavs being so decimated in regards to injuries and trades and all that went on for us this season go, even though they're not gonna, my opinion, they might stay in the play-in. And thinking of the playoffs for the East and the West, who do you have coming out of the West? And then you can kind of give your thoughts on the East. Plus, who are your thoughts? Who's coming out of the West and then the East?
Man, throwing the East to the side like that is crazy because that's a team I've been rolling with the whole time, but we'll talk about them in a second. I think right now, um, listen, I don't think it makes any sense for the Mavericks to continue to fight for um, the play in, essentially. I think it's just better suited for them to, kind of pack it up this season and
Mm,
see where they fall. And I think they own their own pick this season. Uh, this draft is it's a solid draft. I mean, what happens if you end up getting a kid like Dylan Harper or Ace Bailey? I think it changes the dynamic of
Cooper
your
Flag.
or if somehow Cooper Flag falls to you, I
But I
mean,
think Cooper said he's going to stay one more season at Duke. So they might not.
we'll see. We'll see. Them the money that's gonna be coming his way is crazy. I know he doesn't play for that either, but still. So yeah, coming out of the West right now, I don't really trust anybody but two teams, and that's Golden State and Denver because they've both been there before. And out of those two teams, I just think it's going to be hard to beat Jokic 4 times out of 7. And I know Minnesota kind of gave them problems last year, but it's not the same Minnesota team. And I don't know that Oklahoma City is ready for that next step yet. I know they've dominated this regular season, and I don't want to slight them as if they don't deserve to be talked about as contenders. I just that youth, man, although I think they're the best out of the young teams out of Memphis and Houston and those guys, I just think it's gonna be tough to beat a Warriors team or a Nuggets team. And I know the Lakers are playing well, but I think size is going to hinder them as they get toward the playoffs and everything slows down. I watched them play last night. That was a playoff atmosphere against a really good New York team. And I just saw where they struggled to score on possessions. There was nowhere
Mm,
to throw the ball other than for Luka to create something down the stretch of the clock or LeBron. But there really are no other. I know Austin Reeves can create at times, but playoffs are just a different ball game. And so I do. I have the Nuggets coming out of the West, but I'm telling you, I had Dallas even post trade coming out of the Western Conference. I just liked what they had done with the roster.
mm-hmm.
Did I like the return they got from Luca? No, I'm like Mark Cuban. If you had gotten 4 additional future draft picks or something like that, then like okay. But I did love the addition of AD. I love the addition of Max Christie, but I love the addition of these guys playing amongst the guys that they already had on the team. And I think that team would have been a load to deal with because give credit to Jason Kidd and Nico Harrison. The culture in Dallas right now is to play defense. There
Mm-hmm.
is now D in Dallas. Those guys play hard. And I enjoy watching the way they play, man. They play like they're playing for something, and that's a culture thing. And I thought that the Mavs would have been a team to that could have matched up well with any of those teams. And then you still would have had your guys, you know, 1A, 1B, and Kyrie and AD that can lead you on the offensive side and create things for you there. Got Clay shooting the ball and Najee playing, a nice role. So I- I'm going with the Nuggets. I like the
Mm,
way the Warriors are playing, but I'm just gonna go with Denver, man. I've been watching the way they've been playing all year. You don't hear much from them because they're
right.
just slow and steady. And but they're also a team that's built for the playoffs, man. They grind you out. And so yeah, I would say Denver on the coming out of the West.
So what would Oklahoma have to add for them to even be considered? Because if, say for instance, if they meet Denver in the Western Conference Final, depending on how the playoff falls, what do Oklahoma need right now to be a finals participant for 2025?
Well, today they would need somebody like Kevin Durant. Uh,
Mm,
but in terms of future, they need nothing. They just need kind of more development from their number two,
mhm.
which is Jalen Williams. I think ultimately, when you take the ball out of Shea's hand, now you're kind of relying on that guy to beat you. And so I just don't know if he's ready yet, although be it a really good player. Um, the thing that Denver has, I don't know if y'all been paying attention to this guy at all, but Jamal Murray is playing really good basketball. That's scary for the NBA, man. That the 1-2 punch between those two guys, that 1-5 pick and roll that they run, it's unstoppable. Their two-man game is unstoppable when Jamal Murray is playing at the height
Re-
we know he can play.
Reminds you of Jason Terry and Dirk Nowitzki, two-man
It's
game.
it's so hard to guard because they can run pick and roll from every area and angle on the floor, and it's just a load. Jokic demands so much attention, and then Michael Porter Jr. hanging around. I do worry about Denver's ability to knock down shots in the playoffs. That's going to be their Achilles heel, if any. Um, whereas the Warriors, uh, clearly they don't struggle there, but they also don't have the size either. So,
Yeah.
real interesting. It's a toss up. I actually think Oklahoma City, as let the media say it too, they do. They have the most complete team. I just I don't know. When I think of experience, I think of me playing against just a younger guy, and I've been
Mhm.
there before. And like,
Right.
I don't really worry. I played a game of 21 with the kids last week, and I think a kid had 14, and I might have had 2 points, and I ended up coming back and winning that game. And he said, "Coach, you can't lie. You were a little nervous," and I said, not one bit, bro. I just didn't have faith in you as a young player to
Yeah.
close it out. And I know what I'm gonna do as an older guy. I've seen this show. You know, I'm twice your age, so I've seen this rodeo a couple of times, and I think Denver has that experience advantage and the size. I just like their team.
What about the East when you consider all the good teams that's starting to really develop in the East? And, Milwaukee's looking a lot better nowadays. Who do you have coming out of the East? Because Cleveland is just a beast, but I'm not going to, talk too much of them. I'll let you kind of give us your thoughts.
Man, we need to put I needed to go get a Dame Dollar jersey, put this on. We needed to put this on Twitter. We needed to send it to Dame. I've been rocking with the Milwaukee Bucks for the last 2 seasons. Okay. I don't know if we talked about this before, but I hadn't been fortunate enough to just be sold to one team my whole life. I was born, I was a Mike Jordan baby, and I rode with the Bulls till Mike left. And then I found myself a Kevin Garnett fan and the Timberwolves. And then I got to be a Celtics fan for a while. And now the league is just fluctuated with talent. It's just so hard. But my buddy, one of my best friends, went to college with Dame. So
Oh,
I knew
what?
about at Weber State. So my guy, Devian Davis, played with Dame when he was a freshman at Weber. And
Nice.
so I've been knowing of Dame for a long time. And the fact that he came into the league and did what he's done, I mean, I've just been a fan. And then he's hard not to like just as a person. Yeah, real life. You know, he says the right things. He's always been a great teammate. I think a great leader. I love listening to him speak.
And he
Um,
got some bars.
The fact that he can rap is just ultra cool. But no, so I've gotten a chance, and I mean, guys, when I tell you like being a league pass baby all my life, I pick a team and I watch them. It's harder now because, like you said, there's more teams playing better ball. I've been watching the Pistons a lot this season.
Yeah,
Uh,
man.
a couple of years ago, Charlotte was having a good year. I think I mentioned that on the pod last time I was on, and I was locked into what the Hornets were doing until they decided to fall off a cliff towards the end of the season. But I watch every Bucks game. Even if I'm up, if I have AAU practice or something going on at the school, I duck off and go in the office, and I'm watching the game. I watch every post game with Doc. I watch every post game interview that Giannis is a part of, Dame, and anybody else that's getting interviewed. I'm watching. I'm listening. I just like where they're at. So I'm biased in that. It's obvious that Cleveland and Boston are essentially on a class collision course to meet in the Eastern Conference Finals. But listen, going back to that experience deal again, uh, man, Milwaukee has some guys that have been in those moments before,
Mm.
and I just think that with our size and adding, and I'm saying our, this is my team now. I'm biased. We've added Kyle Kuzma, so we've got younger.
Yep.
Shout out to Chris Middleton, we miss him, but Kuz is 6'10" and he's a champion. Our defense has vastly improved. We're huge, man. We go Kuz, Giannis, Dame. We've got shooters all around. We've got Gary Trent Jr. We've got AJ Green. We've got Torian Prince. We have Dame, top 75. We know what he does, like you said. We also have added a young guy to the roster who is fully bought in Kevin Porter Jr.
Yep.
And I don't know if y'all been watching, but rotation wise, Doc sits Giannis and Dame at the beginning of the fourth. Doesn't matter whether we're up 10, down 10. And I've watched Kevin Porter Jr. in 2 games already since he's been with us, where we're down 10 plus, and he's been the catalyst that drove us back to not only come back and catch up to the team, but then also take the lead and let those guys come in and close. So I just like where we're at. Bobby Portis hasn't even played because he had the pill incident. So that's another punch off the bench. Um, we do clearly, because I've watched the team. We have some Achilles heels too, but I'm only gonna ride with the Bucks. I'm only putting that energy out there. I know there are teams out there that are better than us record wise, and we haven't beat any of those teams too. Because I know Boogie Ball coming with the stats. We haven't been we haven't beat Cleveland this year. We haven't beat Boston this year, nor have we beaten the New York Knicks this year.
No
So
way.
we haven't beaten either of those teams. But listen, again, I listen to post game interviews. We're not worried about those kind of things. We know when the circumstances change, people play different, and we're counting on that. So I got Milwaukee coming out of the East. You can argue with me up and down all you want to, but I'm being a fan here, and I'm very biased about it. I put a lot of time into watching those guys,
So what were your
and I
thoughts when
enjoy
they
watching.
won the what was your thoughts when they won the Emirates Cup?
Yeah, I'm a little superstitious. My grandmother was the type to pull me back around the other side of the pole if I was going to split the pole. So, and my family also, if you see a black cat, we don't drive past it. We don't. So very superstitious. Uh, I was hoping it wouldn't be one of those deals where like we won this, and so like we're happy now, or maybe we won this, and so we don't have a chance to win the finals. But I actually, in listening to Doc and listening to other guys, they're telling you like, hey, if it's something out there that you have to win, we want to be the ones to win it. And
Mm.
so that made me a little more confident as a fan to say, man, put something in front of these people and they're gonna play for it. So I was happy that they won the cup. Again, also too, we started the season off 2-10, right? So the fact that we actually fought back in the standings and then continued to make a run in the play in the Emirates Cup, I was happy for them, But ultimately, I want that Larry O'Brien for them, man. I really want it for Dame
Yeah,
more than anybody.
facts.
And I'm gonna tell y'all another thing before we move on. I'm a huge fan and advocate for Doc Rivers.
I was going
Uh,
to ask you about him. That was
yeah,
my last question
man,
for you. And then what
man.
are your thoughts on his coaching philosophy? And even though he had a great team in LA, the Clippers, can he replicate that and win a championship with the Milwaukee Bucks?
I don't think those Clippers teams were great, and there
They
were
were
two.
exciting.
They were exciting. There were 2 seasons where I fell for the excitement. Right, the Clippers teams back then are a perfect example of on paper we look good because you're right, man. They just. But when I really start to reflect and think basketball, I'm like DeAndre Jordan was nobody you could throw the ball in the post to. There were
Yeah.
times where you had to take him on and off the floor based on what times of the game it was because he couldn't shoot free throws.
Mm,
Blake Griffin is probably, even in his prime, was probably better suited as a third option. I don't think that he ever was a second option. And then Chris Paul is not necessarily a first option type of guy. He's just he's amazing Hall of Fame point guard. But I don't know that the Clippers ever really just had a number one. They just had a collection of really good talent. Jamal Crawford was there, JJ Redick was there, but these guys are specialists in what they do. And that's my point with Oklahoma City, right? They're going to take the ball out of Shea's hands. Nobody's going to let Shea score 60, 70, 50 in the playoffs.
mm-hmm.
Somebody else is going to have to beat us. And I think the Clippers ran into that all the time. Chris Paul is not,
Mm,
I feel like even when they did have success, like in those San Antonio series, a couple times they beat the Spurs, Chris Paul was actually a scorer for those people. He had to be, and that wasn't his natural game. So I don't think those Clippers teams were great. I think they were great regular season teams with a lot of talent, and they would beat you Monday through Sunday in the regular season. But when you could hone in on them for the playoffs, they were going to struggle, man. They just didn't have those pieces. I'm going to tell you why I'm a big component for Doc Rivers, man. He lets guys rock out. He encourages players to be stars in their roles. A la Eddie House. We can go back to the Mike Miller days when he was in Orlando, Tracy McGrady. I just think there are guys like Rajon Rondo, who I think his development was huge under Doc. I just think Doc is a player's coach at the end of the day. Is he has he lost some series that he probably should have won? Absolutely. Who hasn't? That's part of the game. And listen, I listen to these guys. I'm telling you, they love playing for Doc. If you ask Bobby Portis, he just got Doc, and he won a title with Bud with Budenholzer. And Bobby says, "Man, I love playing for Doc because he lets me rock out. It's the he lets me rock out, but I hold you accountable piece too.
mm.
I love Doc Rivers, man. I know he gets a lot of slander, but that's what they do in the media anyway. And I like Doc Rivers a lot. I'm a major component of his philosophies. I just think he's somebody that's not very egotistical. He gets out of himself and he uses his staff. And man, I like guys like that, man. I really do.
Gotcha. So just to wrap it up, your thoughts will be will be Denver and Milwaukee. Is that what I'm hearing?
Correct. With Milwaukee coming out on top.
I know. No.
Not because I'm biased, but because I watch Brook does a good job guarding Giannis. I mean, excuse me, Brook does a good job guarding Jokic.
Oh,
We
no.
have no matchup for Jamal Murray. I'm sorry. We just can't guard. We just can't guard him. I watch him. We send him left. He just goes to lay the ball over the left hand. We send him right. He pulls up on a dime. We just have nobody that can guard him. We throw Gary Trent. We throw Andre Jackson over there. We throw Dame over there. I mean, it's. I'm like Boogie Bob. It's this for Jamal Murray, but he puts fear in a lot of guys' hearts for real. He might be your favorite player's favorite player when it comes to big moments. Uh, so
That's crazy.
so that's why I am being
Mil-
biased in that too. Yeah, for sure.
All right, Milwaukee and Denver. Boogie Bob, the East and West. And again, we're going to start with the West for you. Who do you have coming out of the West as far as getting to the championship? And then we'll follow that with the East.
Well, I love listening to Coach Mason break it down. He should be like the play-by-play announcer. I could be the color analyst. It's like I like the
We'd
way
be great. We'd be
we'd be
great.
great. We could tag team.
Yes,
But
sir.
they always say they usually say this in football. but it applies to basketball. The only stat I got for this part of the segment is when it comes to the playoffs, is 0-0.
Mm-hmm.
Every team starts
Absolutely.
with 0-0. So
That's right.
it doesn't matter what in the regular season. There's some teams that uh, own another team in the regular season and get to playoffs, and they're lucky if they get to game 5.
That's right.
It's just it's the way it is. Regular season is a grind. It's a marathon, but the playoffs are a grind.
Mm-hmm.
Dirk used to call that. You got to just keep grinding away. And there are some teams. That's why I always respected Popovich and San Antonio. Their teams played in the regular season, but they were built for the playoffs.
Absolutely.
Uh, so for the regular season, I have OKC winning first place. I have Cleveland winning first place. That's a no brainer as far as
No
regular
brainer.
season.
Absolutely.
Uh, Now, this next, I'm going to tell you who I have in the finals. Before I say it, it's rigged. It's rigged because because nothing worked helped the NBA and Adam Silver more than a Lakers Celtics finals.
Absolutely.
So you heard it here. Boogie Bob is out there. I'm way out there on that branch. There's only about that much on that branch holding this up. We're not talking about the tree limb that's like that big.
Sure.
We're talking about a little bitty branch.
Sure.
But I would not be surprised at all. Lakers are up to the second seed. Uh,
Could I interest you in this though, Boogie Bob? Because we get it. And we're gonna talk about this later when we speak about the Luka trade. He has immensely helped the NBA by being in LA. There's no doubt about it.
I
But
and that
I could argue with you that I think that is going to happen, but I think it'll be next season. The Celtics window is wide open, and the Lakers are going to actually improve their roster over time. I think we'll see that matchup next year. I don't know that the
that
NBA will be thirsty enough to give it to us this year.
it and that's possible. I mean, Mavericks fans are hard still. I mean, we're already 5 weeks after trading, and national news is still talking about the trade.
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
Correct.
a decade from now, they're still going to be talking about the trade. 2 decades from now, they're still going to be talking about the trade, regardless of what happens in the next year, 2, 3, 10 years. Uh,
Right.
but the enthusiasm, the way he's like, let's go. I'm like, LeBron's playing like he's a 30-year-old, not a 40-year-old. And, you
Incredible.
know, Luka had some athletes, but he didn't have a LeBron athlete. I mean, LeBron takes off. Who wants to get in front of a 6'8", 200, whatever, 250, 260 pound mound of muscle? I'm like, that runaway freight train is frightening.
It
Like,
is.
Draymond Green's about the only fool to get in front of that.
Right.
Uh, and I don't know if you've seen the clips. I hate the Lakers. Always will hate the Lakers. I've always loved Luka. But
Oh
there's a
man.
there's a picture of Luka standing next to LeBron, and he's as big, if not bigger, than LeBron. And Jason Kidd was always saying that's a big boy. Now, genetics are LeBron's got muscles on top of muscles on top of muscles. He looks
Sure.
like a chiseled Adonis.
Mm-hmm.
And and
Correct.
and Luka looks like the Pillsbury Doughboy. He's never going to look muscular. But
Right.
go search any of the Laker highlights or news, ESPN, wherever, and just any of the pictures where they're standing next to each other. And it boggles the mind that Luka makes LeBron look small. And
To your
and and,
to
Le- and
to
for
to
LeBron to leak out and just know that he's got a quarterback that can throw it to him, and all he's got to do is catch it, go 1-2, boom.
on the money and lay it up. To your
Yeah,
point, that's what's made them so good. They're small, but they're big, right?
Mm-hmm.
They're big everywhere on the floor. They're 6'8", 6'9", and above everywhere on the floor. kind of with no 7 footers there. Jackson Hayes is about 6'11". That's what's made them interesting. And shout out to JJ Redick too and the job that he's done in getting those guys to play defense. But to the point you made earlier though, Boogie Bob, about nobody wanting to step in the way of those guys. Not right now. But when that Larry O'Brien trophy is up for grabs, somebody's going to step in front of it.
Oh yeah,
Um,
you get a bench player say, "I need 6 fouls from you," and hey, you're going to come out of this with some broken bones and some bruises, but hey, you might win us the game in a technical. I hear you, but you've got uh, take Kevin Looney off of the Golden State Warriors, and they weren't that big either. I mean, Draymond Green was
that is
playing
very true.
center, and he was 6'8", but he played 7 foot. Uh, and the game is developed to where you need a lot of wing defenders. And Jackson Hayes that New Orleans drafted, I
Yeah.
think it was New Orleans, wasn't it? Or Houston,
Yes,
one of
sir.
those
It was
two.
New Orleans.
New Orleans.
Yes,
And they
sir.
saw the athlete, and somehow, LeBron hadn't drafted, but Luka gets there, and all of a sudden, what New Orleans saw in Jackson Hayes, I mean, he's got his lob threat.
He
And
does.
he's got his running buddy in Dodo Finney-Smith that can guard 1 through 5. Uh,
Jared
so
Vanderbilt, Rui Hachimura,
Vanderbilt, Hachimura, they got
Austin Reeves is a
Reeves as a
player.
Maxi
shooter.
Kleber, if he comes back.
If he comes back, they need a guy like that.
So,
Yeah.
so I just there's one thing going in the playoffs that's really hard to stop, and the 2007 Mavericks found this out. Momentum.
And the Lakers have that
And
going
the
right now. You're
Lakers
right.
have got that in spades right now. And that's something the Mavericks had last year. They won like 16 of their last 18 games. I mean,
Correct.
nobody wants the Lakers, even before the trade, were on a roll, but I think I saw something like they won 18 of their last 20 games.
They've been balling.
And they beat Denver. And I said last week they're going to have to outscore Denver. Well, they did. And they took the Knicks down. Now Brunson got hurt, but they still had to win it in overtime. What I like that I've seen from the Lakers, I hate to admit that I like something they're doing because it says Lakers, but they've got some grit. When it comes to the playoffs, you got to have some grit. And you've got wing defenders like LeBron in 07 when he made the finals. Coincidentally, the same year that Luka made the finals the first time, and they got swept by the Spurs. Well, the next year they played Orlando, and LeBron, they had 3 wings. LeBron couldn't guard all 3 of them.
Right.
They had that guard from that was at Sacramento. That was their guard there in Orlando.
Is Jameer Nelson?
I can't remember his name right off but LeBron didn't have anybody else to help him guard the wings. Well, he's got wing players galore with him.
Absolutely.
If you go back in NCAA history, there's an Illinois team, the alma mater, Derek Harper.
Mm-hmm.
They had their whole starting lineup was 6'5", 6'5", 6'6", 6'5", 6'6", and they made the Final Four.
You're making me feel better about my pick, Boogie Bob. I'm not gonna lie, because the Lakers did do a great job that evening versus the Nuggets, and I like the reference you're making to that college team too. But we are talking about in those scenarios, essentially one and done, like beating teams one time in college and moving on to the next round. So if you have a nice game plan for one game, that's all you need in college. And I thought JJ Redick threw a masterful game plan on the other night against the Nuggets. They're
right
and
in
won the
a
game.
7-game series. You know all their tendencies. You know where they're going. You know
How do
where
you
their
match
favorite
up with
spots
Jokic
are.
and Murray? How do you do it
In
Yeah,
7 games.
but I'm
in
just
7
saying,
games?
if any team with no height is going to get there, the Lakers can do that this year.
I agree.
And there's in 85, the final 86, excuse me, the Final Four was here in Dallas, and I had tickets lower court, Reunion Arena. And Dale Brown, long before NIL, said, "We're
Dale Brown.
ripping these players off. They need to be paid." And their biggest, he called it the amoeba defense. Their tallest starting player was 6'5". they were all 6'4", 6'5". Allen won the championship in Division 6A 5 years ago. They beat a Denton Geyer team that had a starting front court of 6'10", 6'8", and 7 foot. And
I
the
coached one of those
tallest player
players on that Allen team.
and the
Nice.
tallest player on that Allen team was 6'4", but boy, they could bury the 3-point shot.
That's right.
So
I
like
remember
I
that
said,
team.
it's way out there. It's a tiny little bitty branch, but I'm predicting Lakers Celtics this year. And Adam Silver would love that. They just have
Oh man,
because
man.
the Lakers, if they get there, they're going to want number 18, and they keep the Celtics from getting 19. And I hear you when you talk about Milwaukee, and I don't disagree with that. And Cleveland is still young. Darius Garland is playing one heck of a. He is just
My
off the
goodness.
charts. You know what you're going to get with Donovan Mitchell. Evan
We can't
Mobley
guard
is
either of those guys
probably
either.
Evan Mobley. The sky's the limit. That guy is growing leaps and bounds. Jared Allen fits. I mean, from tip top to bottom, they
They're
are loaded.
loaded.
Uh, so they're no slouch. But it's kind of like the '06 Mavericks. They were young. They made the finals, but they didn't have very many veterans on the team. And you
Sure.
saw them later on. They added some veterans when they won in 11. They had some veterans. So there's merit to what Coach Mason was saying with Oklahoma City. That other than Caruso, they don't have a veteran to get you through that adversity when the game's tight.
Sure.
It is great when you got a 10-point lead, you can play loose and fancy free. But when it's a 1-2 point game and one turnover or one possession makes the difference in the series, uh, the difference of being tied 2-2 versus going down 3-1, uh, until Chicago had to go through that, in
Right.
Jordan. Detroit had to go through that before they got there. So there's a long line of history in the pros that until you've knocked on that door and beat your head up against the wall a couple times, realize what it takes to get through, then you don't punch your ticket. The Celtics lost 2-3 years earlier, so they knew what it was going to take last year,
Sure.
and Dallas didn't quite do that. So you know, I actually hate both of those teams. I have for since 80. I was a Sixer fan, so uh, but I'm my gosh, what kind of ratings would they get if the Lakers and Luka and LeBron, the heir apparent, against the Celtics and a rematch for Luka to redeem him? He played on a bum leg, a bleeding leg, hip injury, arm injury. He drugged that team to the finals last year. If
Nah,
he
he
comes
did.
in healthy, to the finals. He's going to want to light up the Celtics. But talk
Great
about
point.
ratings galore. Woo! Just print that money now.
I'm gonna give
But
you one more for ratings. We watched it last night. I didn't realize how many New York Knicks fans were in LA.
facts.
I mean, Jalen Brunson it was half the crowd chanting MVP for this man last night. So
So
if you could, yes,
Coach
sir.
Mason,
Yes, sir.
season ticket holder. Do you remember when Jeremy Lin was taking
I
over,
do.
Yeah.
I
and
do.
he lit up Kobe Bryant, and then he got injured. But Jeremy Lin and New York Knicks came to Dallas, and I swear we were the visiting team.
Visiting
And I'm
team.
not
Wow.
lying. When you walk the hall of the AAC, there would be a dozen people lying, taking pictures
Wow.
of American Asian descent. There were more Knicks fans at that Maverick game to see Jeremy Lin than there were Maverick fans.
It's
Thank
so
So
crazy because we're
they
gonna touch
travel
on that
well.
too. They're everywhere, almost to the point to where like, as I was writing in my notes, I'm like, the Lakers are kind of America's team in the NBA. They're like America's darling, kind of like the Cowboys in the NFL. But man, watching that and hearing that story that Boogie Bob just told about, these New York fans, man, they're everywhere. I believe they might be the unsung, uh, just the f- the face of the NBA in a sense when it comes to organizations that we don't talk about much because you're going to ask a question in a second about the top 5 NBA franchises,
Yeah,
and
now I
then
was gonna say, yeah, we could just roll right into it right now. There's quite a few teams that are considered top five, but if you had your choice and pick of the litter as far as your top five, kind of
the
give me
Knicks aren't
your
on it.
thoughts. Yeah, yeah,
The
yeah.
Knicks
So
aren't on my list in terms of like great organizations, in terms of organizations ran. Same thing with the Cowboys in the sense of, they're not a great ran organization, but like who they are, essentially they're
globally,
America's
yeah.
team, who they are globally. And I think that's the point I'm trying to make with the Knicks is that like I have the Lakers as one of those top 5 franchises because I was like, man, the Lakers are kind of like America's team. But man, watching that Knicks game last night, and like I said, listening to Boogie Bob say, like, man, when Jeremy Lin was playing in New York and they came out here and played, man, these fans, it felt like an away game for us. It speaks volumes. I think there are New York fans all over, but it's such a small place, and I know that people, it's big with when it comes to the amount of people are there, but it's a small place and people live on top of each other. And at some point, they venture out and they go all over the world, man, and they're well represented. I was thinking last night, like, man, Adam Silver would love this coast to coast basketball, LA, New York, the two major media outlets, of sports. I think that, like, to your
Well,
point,
they
Boogie
kind of
Bob,
like the New York Mets in baseball. It's been a
correct,
long time since they won anything. Uh,
right. So
And
now
Coach
that would be
Mason,
very interesting. Yes, sir.
the Chicago Bulls, where they fall up on your list of top five?
So they weren't. I they weren't there. I want to pull my notes up for this top five. So here are the 5 teams that I had, and I had only one honorable mention. Now, the question is kind of a loaded one. You said, top 5 NBA organizations.
Of all time.
Well,
Yeah.
of all time. And so here were my 5. Remember, I was born in 1985 too, by the way. So I might be missing some here, but I have the Lakers, no particular order. I have the Lakers. I have the Warriors. I have the San Antonio Spurs. I wanted to show some love to the Eastern Conference, and so I thought that the Miami Heat were pretty well ran organization, and then the Boston Celtics are a really well ran organization. And I had one honorable mention, and I wanted to show some love to Oklahoma City. Although, be it, I know that they don't have the titles unless you look at the Seattle franchise,
Yeah.
because that's who they are. I just think that they are phenomenal in finding talent and rebuilding and that notion. And I was pleasantly surprised when I went and visited Oklahoma City. But I didn't think that that would be a place where multi-million dollars would want to be attached to.
Mm.
Multi-million dollar guys would want to be attached to. And I mean, these people love OKC. I watched
well,
Russ yesterday.
and let me speak to that for a moment because I went to OU, and OU
Okay,
was considered a pro football team, even
sure,
though they're not.
sure,
It's the only pro sports team in the entire state. They have a
correct.
triple A baseball team, but that basketball team and the love, it's not so much the love. I mean, they love their basketball. Wayman Tisdale played at Oklahoma, but the Thunder had, if you remember Hurricane Katrina, they hosted the New Orleans
New
Pelicans,
Orleans,
New
Yeah.
correct.
Orleans Hornets at the time. CP3 and Tyson Chandler and David West were on that team. And
Correct.
so that for them to get to see a pro sports, literally a pro sports team, that ignited. And when they got the Supersonics franchise, the owner and Sam Presti, so Bennett owns the team. That
Man,
they my dad still lives there, and I've been to playoff games up there, regular season. They get behind their team. They don't sit down until they make a bucket, and they've been doing that for 20 plus years.
Now, I was going to ask you too, Coach
sure.
Mason, was the ownership the same ownership that came out of Seattle?
I think that's what Boogie Bob
No,
is saying. It was
Bennett bought out. There's two big. Gaylord was big in print and media in Oklahoma City, and Bennett is in that mix. So uh, it was Bennett's money and the Gaylords that bought the Supersonics. They paid some $50 million, which sounds small now, but at that time that was pretty big. and
Sure.
they convinced the city council to build. It's changed name. I think it's Paycom now, but it was the Ford Center. But they had a big arena
Sure.
across the street, and they built a brand new arena before they even had a team.
Sure.
So
A lot.
it was
The,
Bennett is still the owner.
I was going to go back to Coach Mason with the top five. The Knicks, that's a storied franchise for sure. Being that they are kind of close to Boston, if you had to choose out of the 1 and 2 of those, who would you consider a better franchise as far as storied wise?
Boston. I mean, they were actually in my top five. They are probably, if we're being honest, we love the West Coast. The weather's beautiful, like, LA Showtime, but like if we're being real here about basketball, cream of the crop with the Boston Celtics from what Red Auerbach was able to do to Bill Russell. I mean, my God, we can go on and on about. I don't even know how they have jerseys to give out at this point. It's like all the numbers are retired.
Yeah.
That's kind of why you see these odd numbers in Boston. And man, what they've been able to do, their 18 titles. Is it 18 right now?
18, yeah.
It's unheard of. It's absolutely absurd. And even in the years where they struggled, their fan base never left, which is a big reason why I put the Warriors in my top five.
Mhm.
I don't know if y'all remember the Warriors prior to this acclamation of Warriors. Man, that fan base is phenomenal in Golden State or in
Yeah.
Oakland, and they've always been. And so, but yeah, Boston, I think, is just hands down a better organization than everybody, and I think they know it. They live it. Of all the teams that I had in it, there's a culture there. And Boston, I think, is the elite of the elite. So much so, I think they may be one of the most hated franchises too, just because they are so good.
Kind of like the Cowboys.
That's right.
Boogie Bob, your thoughts, man, on the 5 top teams of all time for the NBA?
So we have some similarities before I go through my top five. Uh, there's a common denominator in a couple of those teams you mentioned, Coach Mason.
Yes, sir.
His name is Jerry West.
Mm.
There
Jerry
you
West
go.
was part of that Golden State build. He was
He
also
sure
part of
was.
the Lakers build. I think he even helped the Clippers.
I
Uh,
was so close to mentioning Memphis because, and Jerry West imprint was there too.
Yep.
yeah,
The market, I mean, again, I don't mean to disrespect any of these states or cities where these teams come from. Memphis has no business being as successful as they've been.
Yep.
Um, you know, who wants to play in Memphis? Who wants to play in Cleveland? There are some teams, some organizations that they didn't make the list. But listen, if you're even a top 15 organization and half the league um is where you stand at, I think you're in pretty good standing.
it-
I thought
it's
about the
like
Pistons organization.
it's
I
like
thought it
Derek Harper said. You go to Utah.
correct.
Jerry Sloan. Everybody knew Utah Jazz and Jerry Sloan for 2 decades and a half.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So no, there were teams that it wasn't easy. I think some of those, like the Celtics, I think was just an easy pick. I thought the Lakers were an easy pick. I mean, those guys, they have 36 titles between them essentially. It's pretty 35, 36 titles. So clearly they're doing something right over there. I know we talk about heat culture. I got a chance to watch that expand they because remember the Heat were an expansion team at one point in time. And
Same
so
year as Charlotte.
there you go. So, Pat Riley and then the reiterations of the teams that they've created and the success that they've had. And
Leave
now that
me
they
some
have this,
food on that plate.
go ahead, baby. Go ahead, Boogie Bob. Go ahead, baby. You got it. I at
I
least
gotta
left you
eat.
some.
I gotta eat too.
I at least left you the Spurs to talk about. I mean, my goodness, they deserve enough a lot of credit too.
Oh, you can continue. I'm just razzing you. But I
But
had
yeah,
him. I had him in this order. I had San Antonio. I mean, all you gotta do is say pop. You
That's
don't even
right.
have to say Popovich. Just San Antonio and Pop. We're talking 3 decades of excellence. Uh,
Absolutely.
I have Miami and Pat Riley and Eric Spoelstra. Spoelstra is the second longest, other than Popovich, second longest running coach. And Pat Riley, going back to what Coach Mason said, he was with the New York Knicks as the president of basketball operations.
Yep.
Uh,
Absolutely.
he uh, he took over the guy, and they labeled it Showtime, and he played at Kentucky's U- University of Texas El Paso, the first team to ever start 5 African Americans. So,
Correct.
I mean, Pat Riley's got a rich history all the way back to college. So,
Glory Road, baby. Glory Road.
Roy Road. And then Coach Mason mentioned this. I mean, they were formerly the Seattle Supersonics, but the owner Bennett, and then Sam Presti, he had James Harden, Russell Westbrook, Kevin Durant, 3 MVPs, Serge Ibaka, and Kendrick Perkins. And now you look at him, he's got Jalen Williams, another Jalen Williams, Shea Gilders Alexander, Chet Holmgren,
Casey
Caruso's on the
Wallace.
bench. And they got, like, I don't even have enough fingers for the number of draft picks they have. It
Oh
take my
man.
hands and Coach Mason's hands for the number of draft picks they got. They could literally go buy any player they want with the number of picks they have.
Absolutely.
And
Absolutely.
Sam Presti has done a wonderful job of, I'll take that player's salary and give me some picks. And then move that player later on. Al Horford was one of them who helped the Celtics win the championship. Most
Facts.
Right.
underrated player. Oklahoma City
Absolutely.
had him. They've had
Absolutely.
several. They've helped the Mavericks get Derek Lively because they were willing to take on salary. They have now that payment is going to come due in the next 3 or 4 years when these young talent has start getting their super max contracts. They don't have enough roster spots for the number of draft picks they have.
So they're gonna
But
bless the rest of the league again, like Boogie Bob said. They're amazing.
but Sam Presti was lit up in Oklahoma for letting Durant, Harden, and
Westbrook.
Westbrook go. He
Yeah.
traded him for TP3, got a great year out of him. Then traded him again to Phoenix and got more picks. You know, they were just as upset that they traded Harden, but Harden wasn't a starter. He wasn't the James Harden we know now.
Yeah.
Uh, so
Boogie too. We got to mention they were able to get other superstars to play over in Oklahoma City. They had Carmelo Anthony and Paul George over there for a season.
yep,
Yep.
We
yep.
thought that team was going to do some things. They've done an amazing job. But
And
Chet
and
Holmgren
and
continue on.
what Presti got from the Clippers so that
Oh
TP3
man,
could go play with Kawhi, they're still living. They're still eating off of that trade.
that's right.
And they still got more picks coming from that trade. And they got who Doc Rivers said he was good. He didn't think he would be this good, but he thought he would be. But they got Shea Gilgeous Alexander out of that trade,
Correct.
Facts.
plus
Heist.
picks.
It was a
Uh,
heist.
I have Boston like Coach Mason. I mean, face it, the original 6 teams, Boston was one of them. Philly, uh, the original Lakers in Minneapolis was another. Chicago, Red Auerbach. I mean, he's been gone for a while, but you can't mention the Celtics without mentioning Red Auerbach and the cigar smoking it after that, holding the trophy. People took it as smug, but that was just it. And think of how many iterations they've had since Red Auerbach. Brad Stevenson now is in charge of that. He had Udoka as a coach, let him go, and he brings in uh, I can't think of his name. Missouri,
Uh,
Missouri.
Joe Mazzulla. Joe
No,
Mazzulla.
starts with M. Is now the coach. But
Mazzulla.
Danny Ainge was Udoka's in Houston. Uh,
Correct.
but before Stevenson took over, you had Danny Ainge. What did Danny Ainge do as an organization? He played on that Celtics team with Larry Bird and all that. He acquired draft picks, acquired
Yep.
draft picks, acquired draft picks. there is something that no matter who the person in charge in that organization, that culture breeds excellence to the next person that comes in.
That's right.
And you don't usually see that. Usually when one person in an organization falls, the proverbial teepee just kind of collapses. Uh,
I
but
agree.
that's not so with the Celtics. Uh, and then I was tempted to put the Lakers in, but like I said earlier,
Don't
I don't
like them.
really like the Lakers. But I'm going to throw one out there because this isn't one you would think of. Denver.
Mm.
Calvin Booth has done a wonderful job in getting talent.
Ex Maverick, Calvin Booth.
Ex Maverick helped us win the first playoff series, 5 games against Utah.
Utah.
But
Yep.
Calvin Booth took over. So, I mean, for us old school guys, Dan Issel had been there for a long time. I mean, the Nuggets of the 80s were a team that always was in the mix, you know, and they had Carmelo before they traded him. They had Antonio McDyess before they traded him. Denver doesn't rebuild, they just reload. And,
Great
and
point.
so I maybe a little favoritism because Calvin Booth played for the Mavericks, but I mean, he has done a wonderful job. You get an Aaron Gordon, and Aaron Gordon finds his place. They were trying to
Sure.
trade salary in the 15th pick, uh, and when Michael Porter Jr. started falling, who had back surgery, didn't even play his 1 year in college, they
That is
took a
correct.
chance on Michael Porter Jr.
Sure.
Uh, he was smart enough to draft Jokic. It took a while, but he also drafted uh, Nurkic that same year, who he
I was about to
traded to
say
Portland.
he was smart enough to have both of those guys on the roster at the same time
Yeah,
and made the right choice. Yeah,
and he traded.
I like where you're going with Denver because as a kid, one of the memories I remember the most is that team that Mutombo was on beating that Seattle team, and they were down. They were, I think it was a 3 game series at that time, right? Or
It,
best out of
best
five, I
out of
think at that
five,
time.
yeah, the first round, and then with the first 8 seed to ever beat a number 1 seed.
So like, no, I like that, and I like the fact that you showed love to the Nuggets.
Yeah,
They really have been a load, and I think the players that have gone through, like Jalen Rose was there, Nick Van Exel was there, and you mentioned some of the other guys, Antonio McDyess, Dale Ellis was over there at one time. I mean, they've had some guys whose names are
Pat
synonymous.
Lever, Adrian Dantley. I mean,
AD was over there. So yeah, I mean,
Mm.
really ran organization again. I think if the list would have been 10, I would have put them in there. I like that Boogie put him in his 5. Because again, I even threw a team like the Pistons out there. Um, you know, they had their time in the 80s. They were almost dominant in the early 2000s for a little bit in terms of going to like 6 straight Eastern Conference Finals, and now they're back again with this new roster, and they're exciting to watch, man. I'm gonna tell you another team we didn't throw out there, Boogie Bob. I thought about the Houston Rockets. They've been fairly successful over their tenure. Um, I
yeah,
don't
the
know.
only reason I didn't mention them in Utah is they've had a lot of peaks, but they've had a lot of valleys to go with it.
Mm.
Absolutely,
So,
absolutely,
when I think of an organization, is does the consistency stay there when the ownership changes or the person in charge of president of basketball operations or the head coach changes? You know, they
absolutely.
they they had Kevin McHale as a coach, Rudy Tomjanovich as a coach, uh, and they've had to me uh, the inconsistency, the peaks and the valleys. The peaks are really high, but the valleys are really, really
Are
low.
really low. No, that's fair. Very fair. I
And
like
that's
that. That was a great topic, though.
no facts for real. Speaking of good organizations, Dallas has been actually a great organization for the last 20 years since Mark Cuban has been owning them.
What they just did negated all of it, Mike. We're not happy. We're upset. We can't give them credit right now, Mike. We don't understand it, man. But no, I thought about the Mavericks as well. They also, even in their valleys, they were fun to watch. I like that J Kidd, Jim Jackson, Jamal Mashburn team back in the day. I liked that the team Derek Harper was on. And people play hard. They just weren't overly talented and yeah, of course, then you got the Dirk era and they're there. I would put them definitely in the mix. They're definitely top half, not bottom half of like some of these organizations.
Yeah, I was going to
Being
bring it
ranked.
back to your first point, your first thought. How is the Luka trade going right now currently? Is it, I mean, the way most Mavs fans feel, I mean, I'm a Mavs fan for life more than a player as far as the
Sure,
team goes, because I wasn't born in the city, but I got here as fast as I could. So that
sure,
makes me a native in some aspect. But
sure.
that Luka trade, man, currently it's just a black cloud over the team has been lurking with Dallas. And what were your thoughts on that trade and what's currently going on with Dallas in regards to that Luka trade?
Boogie Bob, you wanna go first? My goodness,
Sure, sure.
yeah, take this one, please. My goodness.
I because we've been discussing this on the podcast for several weeks.
Yeah.
I'll start with one word, and I'll try to do my best imitation. Terrible, just terrible.
That
A shout
Charles
out to
Barkley.
you, Charles Barkley. Join us anytime. We'd love to have you on Swish for Real. Charles, join us. Terrible, terrible. What's gone on since the
Terrible.
trade? Just terrible. Uh, and Barkley was one of the ones that, in support of the trade, he goes, "Hey, Anthony Davis is no slouch." Uh, Let me give you some stats, Coach Mason.
Give me some. Here we go.
Mavs were 19-10 at Christmas. 19-10. That's roughly 600% winning percentage.
Correct.
That's a home court advantage at least in the first round, maybe second round.
Absolutely.
That's a top 4 team.
Sure.
Then Luka pulls his cap. Prior to the trade, so from 19-10 at Christmas until the trade, the Mavericks were 7-14.
Mm.
This is before Lively got hurt, before Gafford got hurt. PJ was out 1 or 2 games, before Grimes was traded, and the litany of injuries. They were 7-14.
But if you look at that, though, they were still a team kind of learning each other because they had a bunch of new players that came
I,
on.
I see. People talk about that in chemistry, and yeah, you get some players. But hey, basketball is basketball. You can either play or you don't. Maybe you don't know the tendencies. But 7-14 tells me you're a bottom feeder. You're winning 1 out of every 3 games. That's
Mm.
33%. The reason I draw attention to that is it's exactly opposite. They were winning 60% of their games to winning 30%. This
Correct.
is before injuries.
For sure.
I mean, maybe they were getting used to each other, but I mean, hoops is hoops. So they lost a lot of close games during that period. The
Yeah.
one player that they talk about war in baseball, winning after replacement against replacement. So this was just, at that time, other than Exum, the only injury was Luka, and
Sure.
they were 7-14. Now, here's something that's going to totally blow it the other way. Since the trade and all the injuries, they're 6-7. Now, who does that except a coach who gets maximum potential out of not first string, not second string? We're talking about third string, and G
Third
League
string.
players.
Correct.
The other day they had the Kessler Edwards that Coach Mason brought up. They
Mm-hmm.
had 3 guys from the G League and 2 two-way contracts and a 10-day contract. Person was their starting lineup. Their starting lineup. And they won the game. So they've been 6-7 since the trade. And I think people forget that. And that's only getting 3/4 out of Anthony Davis.
And one of those big wins from that trade was the Boston win when they went into Boston, damn near blew out Boston.
Yeah, shooters are going to shoot, and if you look at the trend, when Dinwiddie has a good game, they've been winning.
Mm-hmm.
Sure.
And when Dinwiddie's off, they haven't been winning. That's pretty much the way that ship has sailed. Clay's been consistent in it, not necessarily in shooting, but in what he gives you. He gives you that 15, 16. He's Tim Hardaway Jr., but not nearly as highs and lows. He's that veteran, consistent presence.
Mm-hmm.
But they are basically they're a 500 team that's very limited right now. And
Yeah, they are.
I talked about this before the show. Uh, I mean, the Kyrie injury that we did talk about, they're headed for the lottery, and
Absolutely.
we hate we hate that as Mavericks fans. But they got Derek Lively the last time we were through this,
Yeah.
Right.
and Wild Dog said last week it's like Mavericks fans made it through the Ross Perot era, the last time a real estate person. So it may take us a decade, but we'll make it through this.
So
Uh,
let me ask you, Boogie, because you're a true Mavs fan. Uh, how do you feel right now about the Mavericks' future within the next 2 seasons? I know it's tough with the Kyrie injury. We really don't know when he's coming back, but just are you okay? Do you think you'll be okay? Do you think that like you have a chance to get back into contention? And the reason why I'm asking you this is because, and I'll give my opinion. I was like Charles Barkley. I wasn't overly against the trade from a basketball perspective.
Mm-hmm.
I think Luka is overly sensational. I think he's phenomenal. But I did wonder, could he lead you not just to the finals, but could he get you over the hump? And I really did.
yeah,
I quit.
he's a highlight. He's a highlight reel. What I called a few weeks ago on the show. He's a highlight reel player. But I
Sure,
think management looked at him and said the ceiling with Luka was 50 to 55 wins, and they wanted to get to 60 wins. So you asked me how I feel as a Mavs fans, and it's been
sure,
an up and down roller coaster emotional wise. But there's an old saying: you put your money where your mouth is.
yeah,
So in the 90s, I had season tickets when Greg Buckner was the coach, and they almost broke the record for least amount of wins in a
no,
season.
correct,
You
Uh,
mean
correct,
Quinn Buckner? What's his name? Was it Greg Buckner? Who
Greg
was it?
Buckner. Yeah, and then they brought in Jim Clemens. I mean, there was one failure after another
Yeah.
uh,
sure,
before the three J's got there. And
sure,
then they brought Dick Motta back, and they climbed over 500 and got into the playoffs one year when the three J's were there. And then it blew up again when Zach Anelli and Ross Perot bought them.
sure.
So, I mean, I've at various points, I've had 10 game, but in 92, 93, I had a full season.
So can
And
you
I could
compare this particular ownership to the Ross Perot ownership? Because it seemed like it's almost the
absolutely,
same thing.
absolutely, absolutely.
He said absolutely.
Yeah.
And Cuban even said, "Hey, you're going to make some mistakes," and he said
Yeah,
even he made some mistakes. So they're getting their
sure.
feet wet.
Well, see, Cuban was more of a fan than more of an owner. If you kind of compare the
Yeah, but
two.
he also stuck his neck in on talent that didn't work out so well on trades. Zacanelli and Perot's the one that traded Jason Kidd when he was.
That
Uh,
that Chandler Parson trade was like the most horrible trade I could
well,
think of.
That was a
In regards
signing,
to,
I think. Wasn't it?
yeah,
that
That
was
was
a
a
was
signing,
the
but
signing, yeah,
you
but
got
still,
Ray France trade,
sure.
you got the Jawan Howard trade, the Devin Harris
yeah.
trade. I mean, some of those didn't work out so well.
I
Uh,
overly appreciate those efforts, those swings. I mean, my goodness, essentially, again, which is why you did mention Big Mike, like Dallas being one of those teams we should mention it as like one of those
yeah,
prominent
you can't.
franchises.
My hockey coach used to say you can't score unless you shoot the puck.
Correct.
Or in baseball, they like you can't hit a home run unless you swing for the fences.
Yeah.
You
Correct.
know, and we were getting doubles and triples, and so they swung for the fences.
Swung for the fences.
And time will tell what it works out. But getting back to my point is 25 years in a row, I've had season tickets, full regular season tickets, and renewal packages came out Monday, and that was another step, just step in the not so good smelling stuff.
Yeah.
We're there's two things. They
Okay.
raised the prices on regular season, which wasn't too bad, but the playoff tickets, the part of the biggest perk of being a regular season ticket holder was when you got playoff tickets, it was a substantial discount. So you could sell one game or two game and pretty much pay for anywhere
Your
from a
season
quarter to
ticket.
a half of your regular season
Wow.
and still enjoy one or two games. Well, last year, our cost, and we're in the upper deck, our cost for the finals was $600 a ticket. In the
Jeez.
aftermarket, those tickets were only bringing 400 if you could sell them.
Dang.
Wow.
This year, when the renewal came out, they want $788 per seat per ticket for the finals. For the play-in, they want $204 for play-in. First round games are over $250 per ticket per seat. So when we renewed this year, now bear in mind, 25 years we've had regular
25
season.
years.
Same
Yeah.
seat. We're going to a 10-game package.
Wow.
Now
Dang.
we
Does that save you a lot of money?
well, it may and it may not. There's no incentive to buy it. Not only did we go to a 10-game package, we turned down the right to buy playoff tickets
Mm.
Wow.
because the price on the aftermarket is lower than what they want to charge us.
Gotcha.
So
Gotcha.
the second part of it, will it be cheaper, is for those 25 years, we've either had 3 groups or 4 in the group to split our tickets. And that helps defray the cost, makes it reasonable. We all go to about 10 games. When we had 3, you'd go to about 15 games, which is about two a month or so.
Sure.
And playoffs didn't bankrupt us.
Right.
But last year alone, and you had to pay as soon as it used to be, you paid for your playoffs after the season was over and after your regular season tickets were paid for, you paid at the very end. Last year you had to pay every round.
Mm.
Our regular season tickets for your viewers out there, and I'm not making it, we were paying $40 a game, section 304, the first row. It was little over $3,000. It's $3,200 and some odd dollars. Our cost for the playoffs was more than that.
Wow.
Just for the limited number of playoff games.
Right.
And they didn't have home court advantage, so the most they could play would be 3 games at home.
3 games. So
We
it wasn't worth
paid
it.
just for the playoffs, just for the finals alone, we paid almost $2,000
Jeez.
for 2 games.
Man.
Because
You're
they
a
charge
diehard.
you $500 a seat. This is upper deck. We're not talking we're not talking
Sure.
on the court.
And
We're
they're
talking
charging
upper deck.
this without having a legitimate superstar no more. I mean, that's just why
Well,
would
this
you
was
raise the
last
ticket
year
prices?
on the way to the
Yeah,
finals.
this was last year.
This was
Yeah,
last year's $500 seat. This year they want to charge $788
7.
for that same seat.
Nah, it ain't worth
And
it.
I'm like, everybody, that's why I said the emotions have been real high. We're like, we're going to cancel. We're just going to
Yeah.
cancel.
Yeah.
Well, the sales rep have been very emotional and said, well, even if you buy a 10-game package, the longer you've been a season ticket holder, the higher priority you have when they have seat relocation. In the
Gotcha.
last 10 years, there's been a waiting list. It goes even way back to when Dirk was halfway through his career. There's a waiting list. For somebody that has invested in a team for 25 years, at collective group, that's not just one person. We're talking 4 people in the
Yeah.
group. We all had a vote to switch to a 10-game package and not buy playoff tickets. That should tell you how
Tells
we
you a
feel
lot.
about the trade.
Tells you
Yeah.
a lot. Yeah. So I want to, and we can move on from the subject matter. I just want to say that it's that for me that I don't know if you noticed what I said. Oh, I like the trade from a basketball standpoint.
Hmm.
Yeah,
But the more I start to hear stories like what Boogie Bob is saying
it
right
looks good
now,
on paper, but paper never won a championship.
but
But it does.
it doesn't feel good to the heart. And I'm seeing that and I am hurting for Mavs fans because
And I was going to ask you, where were you when that news came down to you?
me.
Yeah,
Me or Coach Mason?
Coach Mason.
So I was in Ennis, Texas all day. Shout out to the E Town, man. I had went out there. We had it was a celebration. It was a homegoing for a woman out there that had been a community person for everybody. And I had went out there and I spent the day with my father and my brother. And I had gotten home and my phone was actually in my hand. And I actually saw Anthony Davis's name first. And
Ah.
I was sitting thinking, they had to have gotten so, but never in my wildest dreams did I think that it would be Luka Doncic. And I don't know that I've ever had a reaction. Listen, we watched LeBron leave Cleveland, go to Miami. We watched him leave Miami, go to Cleveland, and there were reactions there for me, like, oh wow, da, da, da. This. I think my girlfriend and I don't even know if we were getting along at that time, at that moment. And I'm like, whatever we're going through, we need to fix it right now because look at this.
Dang.
And
So is she a basketball fan too?
she is. She's a Mavs fan. We caught a game this year. We actually
Salute.
went and watched the Spurs. We tried to watch Wemby, but he didn't play that game,
Dang.
unfortunately. But no, she is. She's a Mavs fan, and so yeah. And I'm just the more I see it, I've heard. I think I've heard some really great things about this Luka trade. They've talked about his conditioning and his habits. And I heard one guy say, "Hey man, listen, Luka Doncic could literally be smoking a cigarette, bringing the ball up the court. You don't trade him. You just you don't trade him." And I think I'm there now. I think in the beginning I was so basketball excited and trade excited that I don't have any emotional attachment, but I do have an emotional attachment to the people. And I'm listening to Boogie Bob and I'm listening to the fans around. They're hurt. And whether Luca would have won a title here or not didn't matter. And
Yeah.
I watched that love and admiration for Dirk Nowitzki as well. And luckily, he won a title. Not even luckily, just thankfully, he had won a title, and he got all the love he deserved from everyone. But you just don't trade these guys ultimately because the city, the people, they invest in these people. Man, I told you I just went to the game Saturday. I don't know that I saw any other jersey but Luca jerseys. He has
Mm.
been gone for 5 weeks essentially. Uh, and now hearing what Boogie Bob is saying about the tickets and like how much he's actually invested, how much money has been spent, how much time, how much energy, man, I hate it for everyone involved because I don't think that Nico Harrison ownership, I don't think they thought about the people first. And for
Nah.
that, it's an
Well,
absolute shame.
they may have anticipated they didn't anticipated this large because they're not as invested.
So let me
You
ask
It's
you this
it's
question,
that.
Coach
It is
Mason.
that. Exactly.
There's two.
you take a season ticket holder for 25 years and piss that season ticket holder. I'm just one, and there's
Yeah.
20,000.
So Coach
25
Mason.
years, even at 2 grand for the regular season, that's $50,000, and we've invested more than that. And we're talking ordinary working people that over Dirk and Luca's career have put money. They have put their money along with their heart. They put their money on the table. They are invested in their team,
Yeah.
and even more importantly, they're invested in their players. And
So much so, Nico Harrison should have called all Mavs season ticket holders to AAC, and you should have had a meeting, and you should have said, "Hey, listen, Luca doesn't know, nobody knows. I'm asking you guys because you guys are the ones investing. I'm thinking of trading him. What do you think?" And everybody in the building would have said, "Hey, listen, no." And if Nico would have asked, "Hey, listen, what if I can guarantee you we win a championship in the next year or two?" If the
doesn't
fan
matter.
base still
Doesn't matter.
said, "Don't do it," then you don't
Luka could
do
be
it.
300 pounds and when he's out on timeout smoking a bomb to go back on the court, 300 pounds, and still be half of the players and score his 30 points, and the Mavericks wouldn't care.
So
They
to
wouldn't
that
care.
point,
But
I
here's the
I
thing.
didn't think about that.
What is the Mavericks' identity? I mean, even if you're a Mavs fan for life and not just rooting for one player,
Sure.
who is their identity?
Don't have
Is,
one.
is it PJ because he's a local guy? I mean, they have a collection of players that uh, I'll bring this up. This is a point me and a friend were talking about. There's only one player left on the team that was there when Nico came in as general manager.
Dwight
And he would
Powell.
be gone if he wasn't on a minimum contract. Dwight Powell's the only guy left. He don't have no investment. He didn't draft Luka. I mean, he's got
Yeah,
Hardy. So it's a collection of talent and a collection of players, but the Mavericks fans don't feel like they're ours. They
they're
don't
not.
like we're other than Kyrie, who we've grown to love, but
Sure,
he
sure,
doesn't
sure,
feel
sure,
like where's our identity now?
sure. It
Coach
would have to
Mason, I was
be
going to ask you
Jason
this
Kidd.
question though. When the two main topics when this trade happened, people were thinking like maybe it's because of the max contract he's going to be getting, or they're trying to bottom the team to move him out of Dallas. What are your thoughts on those two things as far as the conversation goes?
Yeah, I, both outrageous. I mean, listen, you talk about or not trading franchises, moving franchises when teams aren't doing well there. So like Sacramento, I could see why they thought about moving that team for years.
Mm.
Even though their fan base is tremendous. Um, you move franchises like that, you do not move staples. The Mavericks are an NBA staple now. I don't know if people understand that. They're a team that I watch it when the NBA is putting out the schedule year in and year out with the nationally televised games. The Mavericks have their fair share of games, and
Mm.
And Christmas Day. We've been on
Christmas
Christmas
Day.
Day games since 2011.
Come on, man. You don't move those franchises. What are you moving it for? And then you got guys like Boogie Bob who have been season ticket holders forever. You move teams when people aren't investing in the team anymore. So for you to sabotage a franchise like that to try to move them, it goes back to what Boogie is saying, like, who is ours? What is ours? And I don't think that we understood. Maybe Boogie did, but I don't think that I did. That I
Mm.
understood what was going to happen when Mark Cuban sold his majority
Yeah,
share.
that
It
was.
just
It looked
really,
weird in the beginning because he was handing the trophy over to the new owners, and as far as the Western Conference trophy goes, and I was like, this doesn't seem right.
And
man,
you bring up a good point, Coach Mason, because Wild Dog and I going to a game in the car, we're arguing and we're watching game 6 against Minnesota at Chili's. He goes, Cuban's still the governor. I was like, no, he isn't. He has zero say. Well, he still owns a percentage. I said, no, you don't get it, Wild Dog. Like Wild Dog was so intimate and he has inside knowledge that I don't.
sure,
I said, the collective barter, I said, he's got zero input. He's got 27% interest in a potential casino, which is a bigger pie. He had this pie, that I can't do it
sure,
on camera. His pie was like teeny
sure,
tiny Maverick.
sure,
Well, a casino, 27% of the sands is like a much bigger pie.
sure.
If he really didn't want Luka traded, he should have put it in stipulation when he sold his shares.
Yeah.
But he
Absolutely.
only showed. Here's what most people in the public don't understand: when Don Carter sold the team to Ross Perot, Zach and Ellie, a lot of the minority owners that had anywhere from 1% to 5% ownership in the team kept their shares. So when
Mm,
so when Ross Perot and Zach and Ellie sold the team, there was a maximum of what Cuba could buy. It was more than 51%. That's why I called the shot. But
Mm.
there still was I don't know the numbers, but it was more than 20% where there was a collection of those people that own 1% or 5% in the team.
Sure.
Cuban convinced those guys to sell their 1% to 5%.
Man. Yeah.
We're,
So
that's 40 years of ownership of the Mavs when they sold to the Sands Hotel that they sold. So he gave up all rights. Basically, he's just another fan in a fancy seat.
and
Yeah.
I think that, and I don't know how old Mark Cuban is today,
He's
but I do
he's a
think
couple years older than me. I think he's either 2 years older or younger than me. I think he's either 60. I'm 65, so he's either like
okay.
2 years older or 2 years younger. I don't remember. I think he's 67.
I know he's
Somewhere.
experienced. It's still so fresh right now. I've heard him say too, like in interviews, like, "Hey, when I sold the team, I didn't think that the team were going to sell them, trade away the franchise player, and so on and so forth." But I do. I think that he's going to look up in, I don't know, 5, 10 years, and really see that like it just wasn't worth the money. I've already seen the amounts of money I've seen. It just wasn't worth it to give up my rights as an owner and put these Mavs fans through what they're going through today. And we don't know if they'll ever get back to prominence. We're staying optimistic for them. They do have some really good players on this team, although be it injured. But yeah, Mike, I'm not gonna lie. I just didn't know that
But
this fan base was so invested and
Well, you're
I
looking
just
at one fan
here's the
right
other
here.
thing to
Even though I don't
consider.
have a Mavs shirt on, I'm 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 hurt. You know what I mean?
Boogie
But
Bob, I see the banner in the back too.
yeah.
Like that's hurtful for
Always
me, man.
representing. But here's one
That's
other
hurtful.
thing that that they didn't consider. Uh, when Cuban decided to basically call it quits, his voice disappeared.
Absolutely.
No, facts. So
And
I want to go ahead and move on because I know we're kind of pressed for time. The next subject we're going to talk about, and it's just the legacy of the Phoenix Suns, and then we can go on about the Mavs forever because that's we are all passionate about as
Sure.
far as me and Boogie Bob goes. But Bob, we have quite a few players that play for Phoenix that are legends, and some of those names could be Kevin Johnson, Nash, Dan Marley. Kind of give us your thoughts on the legacy of Phoenix Suns and some of your favorite players from that organization.
yeah, and there's a lot. I mean, Tom Chambers was a Phoenix Sun. Charles
Yeah,
Barkley was a Phoenix Sun.
yeah,
The Matrix was there.
yeah.
Stoudemire was there. I mean, there's a long laundry list.
Man,
I take
great
Kevin
names.
Johnson. Kevin Johnson played. Kevin Johnson was actually the starter on a team when Jason Kidd and Steve Nash were there. They're 3-point guards. Think about that. Kevin Johnson, Jason Kidd, after winning Rookie of the Year, and Steve Nash.
Yeah.
And the coach said Steve Nash was probably the best point guard of the three, and then they traded him
Sure.
away. A young Steve Nash.
Sure.
To me, Kevin Johnson was the quintessential old school point guard.
Yeah.
Sure.
And remember that dunk he did? I think it was against was it Chicago or Houston that he dunked on the whole squad. It was like, how I didn't know you can hop
Oh
like
man.
that.
Man.
And
Man.
and he was not that big nor that quick. Yeah, he's 6'1", 6'2"-ish, somewhere in there.
Right.
Wasn't quick, but he had solid game. But he ran the team. This was before Mike D'Antoni and the 7 seconds and shot. That
Mhm.
Kevin Johnson led team. He CP3 is the closest we have to that kind of player today. He
Right.
lived for the assists. So to me, he was vastly underrated.
Sure.
Let me give you some of the to make an all-star team. Here are some of the players he had to do better than.
Mm.
Magic, Stockton, Peyton, Harper, Fat
Yeah.
Lever
Yeah. Oh, Fat Lever he was with Denver at the time, wasn't he?
The Nuggets. Hmm.
with the Nugget. That's 5 players that any basketball head is going to recognize. Yet
Sure.
he made 5 times he made the All NBA team. made the second
Right.
team. So, but think about that. You're talking about Magic, Stockton, and Peyton, the career assist leader in Stockton. I mean, the glove
Insane.
and Peyton, and Kevin Johnson was no slouch.
Insane.
So I think during his playing days he was underrated.
And then he
His
had the
career
center
stat.
Mark Nance. Wasn't Mark Nance the center at that time?
Who?
Mark Nance.
Larry Nance.
Was it Larry Nance?
Yeah, they traded. I got that coming up.
He said, I got that coming up.
Yeah. So his career stats. Remember earlier I was saying point guards only played till they're about 32 or 33.
Yeah.
Correct.
17.9 points a game, 3.3 rebounds a game, and 9.1 assists. So he was
Jeez.
basically 18 points and 9 assists a game from a guy who was not a shoot first kind of guy as a point
Correct.
guard. 5 times he was in the voting for MVP. Think about that. During the Magic, Stockton, and Peyton era, 5 times he got voting shares for
And that's
MVP.
still the same era of Jordan as well, right?
Same era as Jordan, but we're kind of focused on just the West.
Gotcha.
Sure.
He won Most Improved Player in 88, 89. 5 times, as I said before, All NBA. 3-time All-Star.
Mm.
3-time All-Star in the West. That was stacked. I didn't even
Correct.
mention the point guards for Houston at the time. So let me give you this trade. This is just a
You
golden
also
nugget for
had
you,
guys
Coach
like
Mason.
Terry Porter too in Portland
You
at the
had
time
Terry
too.
Porter and Clyde Drexler.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
And
here's a
then you got picks.
golden nugget for you, Coach Mason.
Yes, sir.
February 25th, 1988, traded by the Cleveland Cavaliers with Tyrone Corbin, Mark West, and a 1988 first-round draft pick who turned out to be Dan Marley, was later selected. A 1988 second-round pick, which was Dion Garrett, and a 1989 second-round pick, which was Greg Grant, was later selected to the Phoenix Suns for Larry Nance, Mike Sanders, a first-round pick.
Wow. And this was a Kevin Johnson trade
That's how he ended up that pick. That's
in
how they
Phoenix.
ended Kevin Johnson.
And then he averaged them 20 points a game for he was 20 and 10 for 3 seasons almost. Then end up being do you think he was the second best player on that team when Charles Barkley had came over there and they ended up going to the finals?
Because they had Dan Marley on that team as well, though.
Correct, but I feel like KJ was a problem. He also
Yeah.
has that moment where he dunked on Hakeem Olajuwon. My goodness
Maybe
gracious.
that's what the dunk I was talking about.
That dunk is that's a historic dunk.
So
KJ's that dude,
if
man.
you think about all the players Phoenix got in that trade and all they gave up was Larry Nance and Mike Sanders and a first-round pick. They
No, they got a steal.
ended up with KJ, Mark West, who was the center for a while, and Dan Marley, and some other players that didn't pan out.
Ty Corbin, he was sent off or he ended up coming to Phoenix.
Coming to Phoenix.
Oh, that was a steal.
Mm.
Because Ty Corbin ended up being on Jerry Sloan's bench for a long time as well, too.
Ty Corbin was a beast too, as far as rebounding goes,
he could
and
play.
he had great defense.
Yeah,
And
that was a heist.
And Dan Marley, the Thunder
Dan.
dunk.
But those Cleveland teams in the late 80s, early 90s weren't bad either. So I could see how they could make that move, take back less talent.
Yeah. You're talking during the Mark Price and
Mark Price, Brad Daugherty
time period. Yeah.
Larry Nance was over there. They had guys too.
He was a power forward. He was a strong power forward, could rebound.
Correct.
So I mean, you could kind of see the parallels in that what we're talking about earlier with the Luka trade.
Absolutely. Heist. Yeah, I think that when I look at the legacy of the Phoenix Suns, I think one of my first NBA hardwood classics to watch where I was like locked into the game. Remember, it's not the same technology, so these games are old. But it's Gar Heard's shot against the Celtics shooting the ball backwards. Do y'all remember that? Off and inbound, sideline out of bounds. You're gonna have to go Google this. It's a sideline out of bounds play. I want to say it's 1976. They're in the NBA Finals against the Celtics. Who else, of course? And they throw an inbound pass in, and Gar Heard's back is to the basket. He's at about, he's probably on the left, well, it'd be right elbow. And they throw the ball into him, and he catches it, and he shoots the ball backwards, and he makes the shot, and he forces a triple overtime. So that game is insane. But then I think that for
So
me,
let me add a couple. Gar Heard, since I'm 65,
sure.
he played at OU, my alma
Oh
mater.
wow. Oh
But
wow.
he's also been on the Mavericks coaching staff back in the Dick Motta era.
Mhm.
Wow. So that was a good name then that I threw out there for this pod.
Yeah,
Uh, so yeah, watching that and then kind of watching them evolve, the relevancy, I think has, and the consistency. Um, listen, I think it's crazy that they don't have an NBA title in franchise history because they have been fairly consistent. You guys mentioned the names. I don't have to, that even when Starberry was over there, that was a
Mhm.
formidable team.
And I was going
And
to
a
ask
lot,
you, Coach, what are your thoughts on Devin Booker as far as him as being a franchise more recognized player? Well, this is just for current, I guess.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Some of these guys, I just wonder, how do you build around them? I think that the team that they had around them that went to the finals was a perfect team, but then of course now you try to buy your way to a title, and it throws off everything,
Mm,
and I don't know that they ever sit with Devin Booker, and if they do, I don't know that he's evaluating talent the same either, and like what it takes to win. But clearly an all-time talent, a legit first ballot Hall of Famer. I mean, this guy put 70 up on the Celtics in a game, although they weren't very good, and I think they ended up losing the game as well. But no, I'm surprised because not only has Phoenix gotten credit for the players that they've had on their rosters, the Arizona is a place where people don't mind living because the weather is fairly warm in the wintertime. And then they've also been known, especially when Shaq had his run there, at
mhm.
one time point in time, they had the best athletic training staff of anybody in the NBA. So I I just think that as a franchise, I don't really know how I evaluate them. They have been consistent, but there's a part of me that feels as though they've underachieved.
Yeah.
They've been to
And
the
think,
finals
speaking of
twice.
underachieving, think about the Steve Nash, Amari Stoudemire, and Raja Bell, as well as the Matrix. That team underachieved.
Well, one year they got robbed. The referees robbed them people that year.
Oh, when
The
they
year
Robert Ory when they played against the Lakers.
it was the Spurs. It was
Oh,
against the Spurs. Yeah, and that
oh,
series
that was
was
he played for the Spurs at that time when they ran Nash into the
that year might
stands.
have that year might have been Phoenix's best chance to win it. And man, those calls and the suspensions, and they never really bounced back from that. And I think too, then they kind of ran into like the years where Kobe was by himself in LA, and I don't know. I
and
just
you mentioned when they made the finals a few years ago, they were up 2 games to nothing.
against my now Bucks, but I didn't want the Bucks to win. Then they weren't very fun to watch. They were a very defensive oriented team, and yeah, I mean, and we wanted to see Chris Paul win a ring. I mean, my goodness gracious. So, and we don't even want to talk about the current state that they're in right now. I mean, you've
Mhm.
got again a
Because they
collection of
right there in
talent,
the 11th spot, I believe.
and they play Dallas, I believe. If it's this upcoming week, I don't think they might play them Sunday. And at some point, I think us people that watched the Mavs all year and had high expectations for the Mavs, just let us fall so we can like Boogie said, we can get into the lottery and maybe pick up a potential future piece. But again, going
I
back to
mean,
the Suns,
if they get Cooper Flag and we got enough big man, how many first round picks would Oklahoma City give Dallas to get Cooper Flag
Cooper Flag.
along with Chet Holmgren?
If
They
they,
they
oh
they
man,
back up the truck and get like how many picks do you want?
Sure. And the Mavericks better make that deal. I tell you what, if they can get Chet and 4, 5, 6, 7 draft picks in the future, man, take that. But no, that Suns organization, man, I don't know how I
Let
feel
me
about
ask
them.
you this, Coach Mason. Since Joe Colangelo left the Phoenix Suns, do you think they're as
Great
good
name.
or
Great name. Great name. Um, they've had iterations. I think that Jerry Colangelo and the Suns
Hmm.
are synonymous with each other. Um, but they've had some success after. And I great name too, because it took me to a moment where I forgot. I don't know if y'all remember this season. Danny Ainge is coaching the Suns. They're 0
Yeah.
and 13 to start the season. 0 and 13. And they end up making a run and they made the playoffs and I believe end up getting out of the first round of the playoffs. But I'll never forget it because Danny Ainge was talking to the media one day and he said, "Man, I think this was towards the end of the season." And he was, someone asked him in the media, like, "How does it feel to go from 0 and 13 to now making a run and winning the first round playoff series?" And he said, "Man, I just get to go home now and the jokes aren't there." And the media person asked, "Well, what jokes were there?" And he said, "My son, I came home one day and he said, 'Knock, knock.'" And and Danny Ainge said, "Who's there?" And the kid said, "Owen." And Danny said, "Owen who?" And his son said, "Owen 13." And so, but but they ended up making the playoffs that year again and winning around. So again, when I think about the Suns organization, it's almost like then think about them that year they went to the bubble. They were awful all season long. They get a break, they go to the bubble, and then kill in the bubble. They go
Yeah.
undefeated in the bubble, and then that Monty Williams era started. So I would say this, Boogie, to answer your question about Jerry Colangelo. I think that the iterations that we've seen with the Suns over time, I think with Colangelo, there was more consistency there. But I do think that afterward, you just tend to see a organization that is willing to fight to stay relevant, regardless. And so for that, I have to give them their respect, even though right now they're not where we'd want them to be or expect them to be. But like they took a swing, and
Hmm.
you have to respect that in organizations. I know Matt Ishbia is the owner now, and supposedly he's loaded and he's got a lot of connections and relationships that I think will continue to have Phoenix as an organization that is going to try to stay relevant. And for that, I commend them. And yeah, just grateful for the Suns organization in totality. But there is a lot of like flack that is well deserved because they have just overachieved many times over, man. But also had some great moments. I mentioned the 76 finals. They went again with Mike and them in 93. They went again, here recently. Every organization doesn't get that chance. I
No.
think the next episode we might need to talk about the five worst organizations in the
We got
NBA.
to. We got
Yeah.
to. That's a good closeout too, Coach. Man, and I know I don't know if y'all been watching me, man, but I've been smiling like crazy because both of you guys right here are basketball savants when it comes to history, man. It's been an amazing show. And Coach, we got to get you on again because man,
I don't
it's just
mind,
a
man.
joy hearing you, man. It's like, man, you know so much. It's like you're deep diving in history where you weren't even born at the time, but you got this knowledge that people got to hear it. And Boogie, you got a lot of knowledge, and I'm just excited to just be part of the show, just to watch it, man. But we're gonna close out, man. I appreciate y'all coming on. Coach Mason, tell the people where they can find you at on these social media streets, man, and get everybody your handle so they can catch up with you.
Yeah, I'm on Twitter at momace22. I kind of really don't mess with everything else. It's too much of a distraction. But outside of that, man, I am on Twitter. I'm not very active in terms of me posting, but I do like to retweet. And a lot of all of my stuff is pretty much basketball related. That or good things happening in the world. So if you want that type of energy, then follow me on there at momace22. I don't really people don't slide into my DMs or anything like that, but I am willing to have conversations about positive things and So yeah, that's where I am there. And then of course, man, you can always catch me at North Dallas High School, baby. I know
Salute.
our season is over, but I've got a young group coming back that I can actually coach really hard. Those kids, I can put them on the baseline when they're not playing the way I want them to, and they run it and they don't whine and complain. So they'll
Yeah,
be fun to watch next year. And so that's where I'm at, man. That's where I'm 10 toes down there. But essentially, that's where people can find me.
man, that's amazing. Now, one last question: how was your thoughts on the North Dallas story we did for you guys?
Yeah, so it was emotional, right? And I think too, if I could go back and redo the interview, I think that I continued to find more insight as
Mm,
you opened up that can of worms, right? And I'm like, man, some of these answers I gave are okay, but I've learned a little more since then. How
yeah,
crazy is that? And one of those is like, I never realized that you mentioned Sinkay and Chandler and Deontay and
yeah,
those guys.
yeah,
Those guys weren't 4-year guys for me. Chandler was the only one. We have some guys that are gonna be here 4 years now. And
yeah.
I this is my second year to have a freshman team, and
Nice.
it made all the difference in like staying afloat. And
Yeah,
if we do get move-ins, like to build them around or put them around the pieces that I'm actually building around today makes a huge difference. But I don't even think I mentioned that one time in that video about how important having a freshman class that's going to be there 4 years is, because I had never seen it. But this year I got to see it, and I'm seeing it now as my seniors have graduated out. I'm like, man, these kids are giving me much more life, but they know me. They know my
yeah,
program. They've been here. They've been seeing me since they were seventh and eighth graders now. They know what I expect. That it changes a lot. So we may have to come back and redo that story or just add to it at some point in time, because like you said, it was great on your part. I love the editing. You just did amazing. So much so I couldn't even text you. I had to call you and let you know how phenomenal of a
yeah.
job you did. But no, I've just learned so much more actually since that interview. And I mean, that's life. We live and we learn and we grow every day.
No,
So
facts. I
you could,
appreciate you.
in 3 more years, you could be like Plano East that played together since middle school.
That kind of stuff.
Yeah.
That kind of stuff. Yeah,
And I
absolutely.
was going to say, we appreciate you too for letting us have the opportunity to interview you and get that story out. And it's really almost up to 200 views, which I think is going to do better than that. But the fact that you gave us the opportunity speaks a lot of volumes about you. And people, if you ever have a chance to go out there and watch the local teams, if you're here in Dallas or you're in Uptown, go watch North Dallas play. Just kind of patronize them and show these kids
Sure.
some support, man. And I'm sorry I missed that last game. I must have
No, it's
got my
okay.
schedule mixed up, but I'm definitely going to grab at least 1 or 2 games coming up next season.
Man, we
Boogie,
enjoyed having you.
man, thank you, man. I appreciate it. Boogie
Yes, sir.
Bob, tell the people where they can find you at on these social media streets, man.
Up there, above Coach Mason,
Right,
Swish
right there.
for real.
Swiss for real,
Yeah.
baby. I should have put my shirt on, Mike. You should have reminded me, man. We could have been out here representing. I just stayed in
Twinkles.
what I stayed in what I had wore to work. But next time, I'm definitely putting that shirt on, baby.
Nah, have you had any questions about the shirt? People like, who is that?
No, not yet. But people these days, man, people are walking around with all types of stuff, all types of logos, and that we don't know where it comes from. Is it your company, somebody else's company? But I'll tell you what, the more I wear it, the more people ask, if that makes sense.
Yeah,
Because
because
they're
you
gonna
got
keep seeing it over and over
that
again.
QR code is on the back of it, right?
Correct.
So that's all that matters.
It is. I'm actually gonna wear that to work one day. When we can wear jeans and t-shirts, I'll put that on.
Nah, facts. Salute, guys. It's been an amazing show, guys. You can see me also on Twitter, X, if you want to get the legal name of it. First
Sure.
name is Mikkel, last name Lampkin, and you got to see the poet in there. So we are checking out. Coach Mason, appreciate you, Boogie Bob.
Man,
Have a
thank you for
great
having me.
evening. Yes, sir. Switch for real. We are out, baby. Have a great one, guys.